depending on what order I decide to release these in. You've probably noticed I've had the end of the world on the brain as of late, and unless you just arrived on Earth from Venus the other day, you can probably guess why. But I've developed what I believe to be some simple yet novel thoughts on it that I figured would make for some chewable internet fodder, and so here we are. However, before I get to those, since this is the internet, I should quickly clarify up front that I'm not using this as a cheeky way to proclaim that the end is nigh. Whether you believe that or not, and your reasons for that belief, are up to you. But even if it was, of the 10,000 ways we might accidentally release a new Stone Age 2.0 balance patch, the undead seem by far the least intimidating. Notice, I did not say the least likely. But have you ever noticed how strangely popular the idea of a civilizational vacuum has become in our modern fictional archive over the last few decades? Now, I've heard people around the internet put their 2 cents in on this from time to time, but so far as I'm aware, nobody's really taken their conclusive efforts as far as I'm about to. At least, nobody with a substantive megaphone, anyway. So, in brief, why do I think post-apocalyptic fantasy settings are so popular? Quite simply, it's because those worlds are the perfect vehicle for men and boys to guiltlessly indulge in the things we're instinctively hardwired to do and enjoy, but which our modern civilized world leaves no meaningful room for. Namely, explore, hunt, fight, and loot the corpses of our slain enemies. It's the same as why open-world survival games, what I've personally taken to calling Wild Worlds, are such a popular genre. Again, particularly among males. Likewise, the preference for zombies or robots as our primary foes enables indulgence in the evolved male combative fascinations without all the convoluted moral and ethical hang-ups that combat with the still living in our modern world entails. The reasons for these sorts of behaviors being discouraged, if not outright vilified, by a modern, complex industrial society are not hard to guess at or understand. But why then, you may ask, if they're so broadly appealing, do these wild worlds nearly always come packaged in an aura of harsh inhospitability and bleak nihilism? Well, I believe there's a simple and a not-so-simple explanation for that. The simple answer is that these worlds are bleak and inhospitable, but only to a thoroughly modern eye, whose owner is not accustomed to the harsh, chaotic, and brutal realities of both nature and humanity. In our world that's obsessed with peace, love, kindness, and fairness, populated by people who can't watch nature documentaries due to the incapacitating dread of the mere thought of animals dying, the idea that death is, in large part, totally random and arbitrary, seems the worst form of nightmare. The less simple answer requires me to get a bit more controversial. You see, up until now, I've been tap-dancing around the issue of gender-based fictional preferences, and though I don't plan to make it the subject of the video, as I already have several other scripts to that effect on the record, when it comes to matters of fantasy, particularly of the sorts that people are willing to spend time and money on, the contrasts between the male and female minds and value scales are so endemic that to overlook them would be like trying to travel the world without knowing how to read a map or use a compass. To cut a long-winded and by now thoroughly redundant tangent topically short, the reason why boys majoritarily prefer G.I. Joe to Barbie is the same as why so many of us spend our free time fantasizing about creating Supermen or titanic humanoid robots, even though every actual military does the exact opposite. It's because the human male is, in all ways, both physically and mentally, evolutionarily built for combat. I've done at least 4 other videos dissecting the individual organs of that subject, so if you want to know more, go check out the links in the description. But all you really need to understand to get my point here and now is that men, by which I mean biological males possessing more male sex hormones per volume than the average college campus, are as fascinated by weapons and violence as we are because being a pacifist in our ancestors' world was essentially just screaming, "Kill me," to every predator, rival and predatory rival in the ecosystem. And as I've alluded to in my own video discussing a potential post-industrial scenario, which was also mainly popular among young men, or so saith my YouTube analytics, as well as when discussing the mouse utopia experiments, forcing any creature to live in a way that runs contrary to their biological nature, is the single most potent recipe for disaster ever devised. Basically, boys enjoy exploring and fighting because they're biologically programmed to. Forcing them to be still and demure is like keeping a migratory bird in a cage or muzzling a dog. It doesn't matter how logical or well-meaning your reasons are for implementing such measures, at the end of the day, it flies square in the face of the natural order. And nature is often like your psychotic ex. It's everything you ever wanted so long as it's the center of your attention, but it'll turn your whole world inside out if you ignore it for too long or try to change it. And with that, as stated, since I've already cracked nearly every other nut on this tree wide open elsewhere, and seeing as I've already sown enough seeds to germinate an entire collegiate garden, I've decided to take the discretionary road and valiantly quit while I'm ahead. As usual, if you're hungry more of this sort of esoteric brain candy, I've several other playlists delving into the more consternate weeds linked in the description. And of course, consider also leaving a like or subscribing, leaving me a tip, or becoming a channel member while you're down there. Or you can also go check out my books on Amazon if you want to put a piece of my head on your shelf. Not sure why I phrased it that way. But anyway, until next time, as always, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, no matter what anyone says, you can never think too much, you can only think badly. Peace be upon you.